Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Football is a flat circle, everybody. Back where we started.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
I really wanted Josh Harris to open it with Happy New Year, everybody, on January 8th.
Well, he should have picked some holiday.
Yeah.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
It's new beginnings. It's all proper
Oh,
now.
it's full on new beginnings.
It's all proper. It all sounds relevant.
Yeah. He hit the high notes for me, though. He did. He hit the high notes for me. I'm sure by now you've at least
We played it live. We played it live at 2.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen, most of the quotes and from Josh Harris today, who did a press conference to discuss really less about the firing of Ron Rivera, which has been in the works for weeks now, because of how they performed on the field.
Since week 4, 5.
I mean, that's really not that far from the truth. I mean, like the reality is like that had settled in a long time ago. And so we all knew that this was happening. And I think he knew that this was happening because the team just didn't turn it around. And this, unlike the previous 3 years, Rivera time just didn't occur this year in October and November. And it was interesting. I went to the locker room this morning as everybody was cleaning out. Thought it was very notable that John Allen did not talk to anybody, which I'll tell you, these are some of the little things that I'll, talk about throughout the week, but like, let's just get to the high notes, which is Josh Harris did a press conference and for the first time weighed in on what the football team is going to look like. I think he lived up to everything he said he was going to. I said this back in the summer. I was told they're going to give this group the year, for better or worse. They're going to give this group the year. I know a lot of people didn't believe that or thought that once things spiraled, maybe they'd fire Ron Rivera and elevate maybe Bieniemy to give him, I don't know who else it would have been, to give him a look, as to be the head coach. But I was told, and they lived up to that promise. And one of the things Josh Harris said today, which is, I think, it's not an important part of what's going on, but he reiterated, I don't think it's productive to fire coaches in the middle of a season. So it's a symbol of, we have a steady hand here. That they know that not everything they're going to do is going to be right, but they are not going to go Snyder Tepper.
You're right.
That's not what you have anymore.
Yeah.
And they have proven this in the first 6 months of ownership here that they didn't like what was going on. It was one of the first things out of his mouth because this is not acceptable to us. This is a long year for us. 4 wins is not what we want, which is why we're making changes today. But we also, as stewards of an owner of a group, are not going to throw drinks on anybody in the crowd. And we're going to do things, we think in a reasonable time frame and manner. So that's minor point 1, which hit a high note for me. We have not had steady hand ownership in a quarter century.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
We've had absentee ownership over the last 5 or 6 years, whether you want to believe that or not, for the most part have. And then for about 15 leading up to it, we had the Tepper form of ownership, which was get it done now. And if you don't, there will be hell to pay. And that hell to pay was for all of us.
Yep. Right. And it was also who is the number one name?
Yes.
Period. I don't care what they are, who they bring to the table.
We're not going to vet him.
Right. We just want the number one free
we just
agent,
want the number one
coach,
guy,
the future Hall of Famer. Fly to Denver and convince
just go
someone.
Get him.
Yeah, fly to Denver and convince someone to come out of retirement.
Yeah, I will give. I'll give. On that front, the one thing, if you want to be like something positive about what Dan Snyder did, he got deals done. If he wanted somebody, he got them. It was rare that he didn't, which you want your owner to be able to execute that way. But he executed that way with no forethought.
Yes, right, exactly.
It was all just go get him.
Yep.
Right. That's a good idea. Do it.
Yep.
Instead of even thinking any of it through. Like the most prominent example of that in recent years is Wentz. Mm-hmm. Like I hate that this previous now group likes to pretend that he forced them to get Wentz, which is not the case.
Yeah.
They did what everybody's done with Dan, and Dan has always just said, yes, do it. And do it now. I don't want it to hang out there. He's a deal maker. He's like, you tell me that's what I need? Okay, just go do it.
Yeah.
But they told him that's what he needed. So don't blame Dan for making you do the deal that you wanted to do. You learned this early with him. Don't tell him something you want that he agrees with.
You mean when you complain about just being a manager, even though you were the one that signed up for?
That's what you decided to do.
For multiple major gigs, which, by the way, that was my favorite part about the Harris presser today, was where he was basically like,
this job's too big for one person.
He was like, it's 80 hours a week for each of those positions. It's a little much.
It's a little much.
Thank you.
Again, this hit another high note for me. He said this. This is not something for one person to do.
Yep.
But he did say, which I thought was interesting, is that he will be open-minded and fluid to talent.
Right.
So if you have, the Stephen Hawking of coaching, maybe you'd be open to him taking on more roles, but that's not how he's going into it.
Right.
So if you get the literal genius, then I suppose, he's open to, I am not going to curtail anybody. However, I think this is too much for everybody. So don't come here and tell me you can do everything. Nobody can. See the last guy.
Yep, right.
Like, that's not a possibility. Rivera made his own bed here. Rivera seems to have realized that the job was too big.
Yes.
And Rivera seems to not have wanted to admit at any point in time it was, until it was way too late.
Exactly.
And he should have done something about this for his own good and for his own sanity and for his own future earlier than he did. And this new ownership group was walked in and said, yeah, we're not going to have anybody do that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But like that's ridiculous. We're not going to have anybody do that. The other thing that's very notable that he said, I mean, and you've probably seen the confirmation of the wide net that's been cast in hours.
You want the full list? I have it listed here if you want it.
Let me see if I have it.
Okay.
Correct me if I have anybody else wrong. Let's see. The assistant GM of Kansas City, who I've never heard of, Mike Borgonzi, is the GM. This is the GM list first.
Yep.
Ian Cunningham, whose name I've heard from Chicago. Alec Halaby, who's the assistant GM Philadelphia. That's not a surprise. Glenn Cook, assistant GM Cleveland. I kind of earmarked this a week ago. I want to see what they're doing because I think they're actually cooking something up there. I know people don't think about the Browns as like this organization of success because they haven't had any, but I think what they're building right now is worth looking into because it clearly is a model that is looks sustainable to me.
Yep.
Adam Peters, assistant GM San Francisco, who might as well be the Ben Johnson of GMs. He turned down interviews a year ago. People have been trying to pull him. Obviously, people want to replicate what San Francisco is doing. They might have the best roster in the NFL. They clearly have a really great culture going on, and they win so much.
Yeah.
And in this day and age in the NFL, when you have something that's sustainably winning every single year, you are clearly doing something right. And don't tell me it's this or that. They have the last pick of the draft playing quarterback for them, and they're winning every single year. And they missed hard on the number 3 overall pick and traded away draft capital that would have ruined anybody else, and they're still going to go to the Super Bowl this year.
Right.
They would have gone last year had their quarterbacks not gotten hurt in the NFC Championship, and they're going to go this year because there's nobody in their way.
Right, exactly. Yeah, gold standard as far as I'm concerned.
Am I missing anybody from the GM list?
You got them all.
Okay,
all 5.
The head coaching list that we've heard that's confirmed at this point. Ben Johnson, not a surprise, who is like the hot coordinator candidate. Also, not unlike last year, like Adam Peters, turned down interviews and said he wanted to come back to Detroit. Clearly has done the right thing there. They won 12 games for the first time in forever, and they might have an outside shot. If they're the ones that play San Francisco, maybe they got a shot at them.
Yep.
Who knows?
Sure.
We'll see. Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator, Detroit. I think they're doing things right up there. I think both those guys might get poached this year. And then let's see how Dan Campbell, he might be Sirianni part duh. Like, we'll have to see what happens
might be available.
He might be. That's another story. Anthony Weaver is the assistant head coach, D-line coach, Baltimore. He's been asked for an interview. Mike McDonald, defensive coordinator, who I got my eye on because they're clearly doing something right. And this is, again, another organization you want to replicate. They win a lot.
Yep.
They have a tremendous amount of stability. They draft relatively well with a couple blind spots like anybody. They seem to, they got it right with Zay Flowers for years. They get it wrong with receivers. So they have blind spots. But, they are sustainably good every single year. When they have a really good team, they're dangerous. And when they have an average team, they're in the playoffs.
That's right.
That's what you want.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
That's what you want.
Yep.
This is what they're talking about. And the other one I saw, Raheem Morris.
Yes.
Defensive coordinator, Rams, was an assistant coach here years ago, has been a head coach. Of all these names, he's the only one that's actually been a head coach previously. And most people, the consensus around the league is he has been waiting for a second chance and deserves a second chance. And considering the way they played, and go look at their personnel, he clearly knows what he's doing too.
Yeah, exactly. I think what this tells me, at least from this initial list, at least not from the GM side of things, but the coaching side of things, is they are very open to both an offensive or a defensive head coach.
So am I.
Clearly defensive, though, is not off the table like some other people have. They've been doing interviews in years past. So
yes.
Yeah.
All right. So on that front, now that is that the list, that I miss anybody else? There's probably a couple
I would
others.
say honorable mention to Harbaugh, because it seems like there's a little bit of smoke there, but I wouldn't even there's nothing definitive there.
Okay, well, let me talk about that for a second. All right. Who is saying Jim Harbaugh has been asked for an interview? Jim Harbaugh is saying Jim Harbaugh was asked for an interview. But if you look at all the other reporters, Rappaport, Schefter, they're not mentioning him. Yeah. And of all people that would mention him, Schefter. Michigan, would know.
Yeah.
Now, Harbaugh clearly wants to go to the NFL. Like the preposterous, again, Pro Football Talk Belichick report that Washington's really, really, really interested.
Oh, my God. That was
ridiculous.
Not. Yeah, it was ridiculous.
They're not. And you'll notice neither one of those names ended up on these compiled lists. Both of those people from their end are trying to push that Washington is interested in them. I would actually think if there was any level of interest in Belichick, it would not be to coach this team or to be the GM of the team, but probably join an advisory group, because they are bringing in minds of success.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
The other thing is
they're bringing it from all walks of life. They're bringing them in and saying, how did you do what you did, and how can we replicate it here? And that's actually where I think if Belichick didn't want to coach anymore, I could see a lot of value of saying, join our group and help us build the next generation. Like Joe Gibbs. What did you do that was so right, and how can we replicate it now? Right. And so that's where I would have interest in Belichick. I'm assuming he's coaching next year. I have no interest in him coaching this team next year. But I would, if he wanted to retire and be part of this advisory committee, great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
The other funny part about the Harbaugh thing is Washington's interested. Yet there was another report today that said he and the Raiders have mutual interest. Yes. And it's like, what?
He's trying to raise
what
the
are we
price.
doing here?
You have to understand what's going on. A month ago, when Eric Bieniemy's name got listed to the Bears, who are now apparently not firing their head coach.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, where do you think that came from? His camp.
Yeah.
His camp. They're trying to get ahead of what they already know that's happening. In his case, Josh Harris was asked specifically about him and did say that they would talk to him. And I would talk to him about the personnel anyway. I'd want to pick his brain. I don't think he's a logical candidate here. After yesterday, we finally got some players basically saying what I've known all along, that it's been a very up and down relationship with him. And that one of the big issues that Ron had, there were two things. One, he clearly had too much on his plate and refused to delegate enough of it. And secondarily, he gave way too much power to somebody that the players were not totally jibing with.
Right.
And that they played hard for him, not for this guy. They played hard for him, and he took his hand off the wheel. And guess what? It skidded off the tracks, and they couldn't get it back on top.
Yep, exactly.
So that does not read to me he should be the head coach of the team next. And I think he knows that, because he was throwing his agent was throwing his name out there immediately. Oh, the Chargers might be interested in him. Oh, the Bears might be interested in him. I think Bieniemy's a very good coach. I think he's a tough personality. I think, if you have a winning culture in the locker room and you have a quarterback that you can win with, I think it might work. Like if you have a magician like Mahomes, having this guy who's riding everybody, making sure that they're doing everything that they need to do to help this guy win, I think it's an asset. But when you got a young team that hasn't won very much and a young, inexperienced quarterback, you saw the result of that. And the players were recoiling from him. And some of them finally were being semi-honest about it yesterday. I can't make a case for him to elevate.
Right.
In this new, I can't make off of that. I can't make a case for that. But I don't think he's a bad coach. And I do think in the right place at the right, I think, where you are matters. He needs to be somewhere that's ready to win, that needs an enforcer.
Correct.
Because he's a very good coach. He's an extreme hard worker. He actually has the best interest of the players at heart. He's just going to ride them and grind them and make them be at their best, all at the behest of getting better. Well, if you don't have a team that's capable of it, oh, boy.
Yeah, right.
Those guys, they were, by the summer, I don't know about this, Ron. And Ron goes, talk to him about it. And they went, really? You're turning our back on us?
Right. And as I
After
said,
we gave you everything we had?
as I said this too, not only this year, but last year we saw it. They didn't really care how they won, but it tended to be on the back of one or two players. Like it would be a B-Rob game, and
Yes.
you'd have 100 yards and a couple TDs, or it'd be a Gibson game, and he'd have a really big day, or it'd be a Terry day, or a Jahan day.
Yeah.
What I told you what the biggest problem was with this offense halfway through the year was Sam's leading the league in yards, but who's having a big game?
Correct.
Nobody. Like nobody.
It was
likes,
all volume.
Right.
He
like-
led the league in yards because it was volume.
Yeah,
He's dropping back more than any other quarterback. If I told you in the summer that was going to be the case, you'd go, they're going to lose a lot of games.
Yeah. Nobody
Unless
likes,
he's some kind of miracle worker, and he's not.
Yeah. Nobody likes going to work and putting the work in, and then nobody sees the success.
That's right.
Like that's just a human thing. It's not a football thing.
No.
That is a human thing because I think we saw it all last year. They all loved it when one guy would show up, and that would be the game plan for the day. It was, like I said, that B-Rob game against the Falcons in the rain last season. They loved that game because it was his day to be the star of the offense, and they never had any of that all season.
We were sitting there in the middle of the season going, every week I'd go, they've got to go back to running the ball now. Like, that's got to happen. And then when they'd come out, and almost it was like,
He's done it like 4 times.
he would go, it was like, he was like, I'm going to show you guys I'm right. Well, we're never overly wrong about this stuff. So if we're feeling this way, it's the players time 10 because they're the ones that are going to have to sit there and answer the weird questions of why did we lose when we're not using our best players adequately?
Yeah.
You're not giving yourself the best chance to win. Cosby said it today, finally said it today. He was like, we were all saying we need to run the ball more.
Right, yeah, exactly.
He said
Yep,
that,
right.
finally.
Yeah.
He said that. Logan Thomas yesterday finally said, I'll be the first one to tell you.
Yeah.
There were ups and downs.
Yeah.
And he said, I will credit him. He never changed. He was always the same guy. The problem was that guy.
He was the same guy.
Yes. And they were like, we respect it by the end. We respect that this is what it is. But at 4-13, you're kind of your own worst enemy. And we tried to tell you that. I said this in the summer. I go, at some point, this needs to be a collaborative effort. They tried to say it to Rivera. Rivera did not step in properly. And because he just gave free rein to Bieniemy, it's not that he's a bad coach or that it's not capable of working somewhere for him. It just wasn't working here.
Yeah.
And when it's not working here, you have to do something about it. And Rivera didn't do enough about it to stop this from steamrolling the wrong way. And once it went off the tracks, he couldn't get it back on because he wasn't the primary voice in the room.
That's right, exactly.
If you're not, they played for you. That was your greatest asset. His biggest selling point is these guys play for me. Like, go watch Vrabel's team yesterday.
Yep.
That's his biggest selling point. They don't have a very good team right now, but they play hard for him. They try for him. It matters for him. You know, Rivera had that, and then he ceded it away thinking someone else needs to do this, and they need this because we're not getting the results. Meantime, every game they play is a one-score game.
Yeah.
And he let that go, and it was the biggest mistake that he made this year.
Right.
It's why their record is what it is.
Sure.
Their roster isn't this bad. Their roster is not the Cardinals, where we knew that they were going to have a very rough year, especially without Kyler for most of it. You knew, like, they don't have a lot of premier players. And in the NFL, you get trucked. And they were incapable of winning a lot of games. I appreciated how actually competitive they were, but they can't win a ton of games. The Rams are a great example of this. They do not, especially on the defensive side of the ball, have a lot of premier talent right now. They did in the past. They don't. They have a few guys. Aaron Donald's amazing. They have a few guys, but they don't have personnel that should be a top-tier defense, and they don't really have it. But the coaching and the structure that's in place allows them to remain competitive no matter what, i.e., they're in the playoffs. They're not going anywhere, but they're in the playoffs, and it tells you everything you need to know about the culture, the system, the accountability, and what the expectations are. That is a team that when they have a really good team, they're dangerous. And when they have an average team, they still are right there or in the playoffs.
Right.
This is what Baltimore does every year. This is what San Francisco is doing every year. This is typically what Philadelphia is doing every year. And in the end, this is a weird one because they're an all-time story right now. I haven't seen a good team crater like this without any real explanation.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Because they don't have injuries, like not enough of them.
Right.
Like, they didn't lose Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and all of a sudden you're like, well, it's Mariota and like Quez Watkins.
Yeah,
okay, so they're not winning anymore. No, they don't even have that excuse. They just cratered.
Right.
They totally cratered. Most good organizations, it's weird for them. Most good organizations circle the wagons, they stay there. This team got out of its own way.
Right.
And that's Rivera's, if he has a regret, it's got to be that. Because the one thing he had going for him was these guys play hard for me. It's what I can sell to you. You give me the right team. I concede control of the front office because I can admit that I haven't picked the best team to put myself a chance to win. But if I just focused on coaching, you'll see they play for me. And he let that part go, which left him nothing to sell.
Yep, exactly.
Zero. And I feel for him because he let go of the one thing that he was amazing at.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That was his secret magic.
Which I don't
understand. Is he a great tactician? I don't think so. Is he a good roster builder? Absolutely not.
No chance.
Right. Like, that was changing no matter what.
Yeah.
But what they gave him a chance to sell was, you could be the head coach here if you could prove to me that this team is going to do what they've done these last few years and lay it on the line. And he didn't do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He didn't do it. So that was the part for me that was like, for me, it was like, I can't even be a surrogate for the guy anymore because I saw what he gave away, and it was the part he never should have given away.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that was the most frustrating part about the entire season was we had come to expect, okay, they weren't the greatest team in the world. They didn't have a starting caliber quarterback or a premier quarterback, but every game was close. They would go toe-to-toe. As I told you, they would have one big win every year where they would beat the undefeated Steelers or beat the undefeated Eagles on primetime or beat Tom Brady at home. They would have one game where you could hold your hat on and go, damn, that's a team that is better than them,
right.
But they would beat them.
That's right.
And then this year, it was like, oh no, because they were getting the brakes beaten off of them early. And granted, one of them, the Bills one, was expected, right? But then it became apparent they were not the same team effort-wise, especially when their best players, as in Daron Payne and John Allen, somehow those players got worse. Both of them got worse in the same year. Like, it just tells you the vibes were all screwed up, and they got screwed up fast is what happened.
It happened in the summer. I described this all long ago. This is a tinderbox. Like, they brought Bieniemy in. This is either going to be boom or bust. Mm-hmm. They're sticking with a very young, inexperienced quarterback. Hopefully it goes well, but come on now. Like, be serious here. Like, let's be honest. What they have in front of them, and a new coach and a very hardcore coach, and he doesn't have a lot of experience. It's going to be very choppy with him. And then they leaned on, well, at least their defense will be good.
Yep.
Maybe not great again, but it'll be good. And once that one turned, it was like, you got nothing left. Mm-hmm. And now we just got to get through this. And they got embarrassed.
Well, I also think
week after week after week, they just got embarrassed on the field.
The week I think it really broke for everyone, though. Not that Bears game, because I think the Bears game, you could chalk it up. Everyone has a bad game once in a while. You could chalk
They actually won the next game they played.
Right, and you could chalk it up to the Dick Butkus stuff, like whatever you want to use for that game. Sometimes you just have a bad game, right? I think the game where it broke on them was that Giants game, where the defense gave up 14 points, but it was just 14 points, and it was a fast 14 points, but the offense only scored 7.
Couldn't score.
And then I think at that point it was broken because the defense was going, we actually just put a really good effort out against a bad team.
And you guys can't score.
Yeah, like we only laid up 2 touchdowns. Yeah. And granted, it was against Tyrod and whatever, but I think that was the game that broke the team because it was like, we actually just put together a great effort, and you guys got 7 points in the modern NFL? Like, what are we doing here?
I keep going back that week 3 game when McLaurin said after they lost to the Bills, we got to figure out what kind of team we're going to be. And I'm like, you're 2-1. What are you talking about?
Right.
What do you mean? You're 2-1. Well, what's the problem? Right, like, what's the problem? And then I went, I heard him say it. I went, oh, no. Because if you're losing that guy, he's tough to lose.
Yeah.
Because he's Mr. Team through
He was
through.
Mr. I want to be tough coached. You know, I want to have
Team through and through. Yeah. And you've lost him.
Yeah.
If you've lost him, then you got nobody.
Right. Exactly.
And it spiraled. It spiraled on him. It's really funny. I know you didn't see a lot of the beginning as you were doing the Caps game. It was by far the most creative offensive game plan
I saw a few of the highlights.
In the first half of the entire year.
Yeah.
It was like this week was screw it. Let's just go out and run all this stuff.
Yeah, it was empty the bucket.
And they were amazing on offense the first half. Like, they tried a million different things. They caught the Cowboys off guard. I'm sure there were a lot of people on Twitter going, oh, my God, they're going to win.
Right.
Like, they're going to figure out a way to win. I was watching their defense going, no, they're not. But, like, this is at least exciting and fun. Then all of a sudden they block a kick, and I'm like, oh, my God. Like, let's see how far this goes.
Yeah.
And then it spiraled the other way. But I'm like, where's this been?
Yep. Right. Exactly.
You waited till week 18 when there's nothing on the line, and half the people watching this are watching for you to lose, and you pull this out? I was like, guys.
Right.
When you've run clearly, there was another one. I'm going to talk about this later in the week. I talked to Jahan Dotson today in the locker room, and I asked him, what would it take to unlock you with the next coaching staff? And he said, let me be a route runner again.
Okay.
This is another thing here with Bieniemy. I don't think there's a sales pitch here. The players recoiled from it. The offense is no better now.
Yep.
They set franchise records for sacks. They led the league in interceptions. And I've been saying this throughout the year. They didn't self-scout very well.
Yeah, right. You were saying that 2 weeks into the season.
The other team is standing where the ball's being thrown.
Yeah.
So they know where Hal's going to throw it. That's on you.
Yep, right.
It's on you. If they are they're not even bothering with whatever motion you're doing. They're literally standing where you're going to throw the ball. Then that's on you for not self-scouting. You're not disguising a thing. And for this quarterback, because he's young and inexperienced, they're taking educated guesses. Well, that's where he's going to go with the ball. You didn't help him.
Yeah, right.
Like, he might be a pretty good quarterback. You didn't install something that helped him disguise what he was going to do, and he got beat up.
Yeah, right, exactly.
In every way possible.
Yes.
And now they might pick Drake May, who, guess what, guys? Him and his family are actually very close friends.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Uh-huh. They, go golfing together.
Oh.
So that's going to be weird, isn't it? Eat it. All right, we'll be right back. Bram watches Joey ESPN 630 Sports Capital.
One more time.
I don't know how many more I got to do. One more time. Let's just circle it all around again.
You have nothing on me, man.
What do you mean?
For how many coaches and GMs I've gone through in my lifetime with no success? I'm sorry.
I mean, well, I've lived it too.
You have, but you got Super Bowls out of it. I've got nothing.
Well, we're going to change that now. Sounds like it.
Last playoff win for me was Joe Gibbs.
Oh, man. That's well, it's the last one for me too.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't get a different one. I didn't suddenly become a Packers fan like Zabe. That didn't happen. All right. So, what do you think of Bob Myers? That was a twist. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
But he's not joining. Initially, people said the ownership group. He's just been brought on as an advisor.
Yeah, right.
He's the former GM of the Golden State Warriors. So he's part of one of the sports resident dynasties over the last 10, 20 years.
Sure, yeah.
He was Josh Harris was asked specifically, what's the crossover here? Because basketball's not football. And,
right.
Steph Curry on a basketball team, I guess the only thing it's even close is Pat Mahomes.
Sure.
But outside of that, there is no one guy that turns you into that. Not to give Steph too much credit, but let's be honest here. He's an all-time player and seems like an all-time team player. And, so I think I'm trying to see the exact correlation here other than he's been part of a dynasty. And I guess it's just worth hearing him out on what makes a dynasty, even if we're talking about a team of 15 guys versus a team of 53, I suppose.
I will say this. It's a breath of fresh air to at least see the owner surround himself with someone like that,
Smart
as opposed
people.
to a yes man, which is what Dan
100%.
basically did. Dan used to do that.
This press conference was, I said it hit so many high notes because it's the polar opposite
Yes.
of what we've had.
Right.
It's someone saying, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to enlist a lot of people who might and advise me on how to get to these answers.
That's right.
Well, that is a wonderful thing to hear, sir.
Right.
Thank you.
And like, just to compare it to the Warriors a little bit, because you're right though, and in that sport, one player literally does change your franchise. You can't really do that, and you can do it in the NFL, but go ask the Chargers how they feel about that with their quarterback and then not being able to win, right?
I mean, kinda. I mean, right. I mean, I guess Burrow's changed everything for Cincinnati overnight, for sure. Like, they were in a Super Bowl immediately. They're in the playoffs every year he's healthy.
Right.
So
sure. But what I will say though is, kind of look at the Warriors, then look at the Commanders, where the Warriors were not a premier franchise, but they're a little bit older of a franchise. They remind you of the Wizards a little bit, where
have a rabid fan base that never really went away.
Right,
they were always there.
Right, but not unlike here. Funny enough, like Baron Davis was their superstar, but they sold out playoff games to watch them go up against
Played
everyone else.
in a very crappy arena for a very long time.
And that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at here. A complete overhaul eventually gets them their new arena. They move across the bay, which you can ask certain people how they feel about that. But either way, they got a totally different feel. They're a totally different franchise than they were 15, 20 years ago. I mean, a completely different brand, feel, whatever. It's a rabid franchise. And so I think if I'm in Josh Harris's shoes now, you're looking at that guy and you're going, you tell me what you guys did out there. Besides the player part, what did you do to literally have your rebrand not be a rebrand, but when you think of the Warriors, you now think of them as this juggernaut. How did you do that?
They became what I think, and this will last for a long time, they're the closest thing that I think we've had to Jordan's Bulls.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Where the Bulls have lived on this legacy they haven't been good.
Yeah, right.
Like, really, since he left, they had a short window where Derrick Rose, before he got hurt, where they were very good with him. Mm-hmm. And then he got hurt, and the in-between of Jordan retiring from Chicago and then coming here, and then Rose, the short period of time, he was almost like Gilbert, very short period of time. They have been non-competitive for, it's going on a quarter century now.
Right.
But they've lived off of this legacy, and I think the Warriors will be the same way for a long time. People are going to remember them as ultimate winners. The Lakers have eons of it, so I don't think like Kobe and Shaq and then second go of Kobe really changes everything. Like the Lakers and the Celtics live in this pantheon of all-time sports teams that it almost doesn't matter if they have a down era. It'd have to be a really long down era. But for the Bulls and the Warriors, the same way. The Warriors had, in fact, the Redskins are really this. I mean, their glory era is a very short period of time in the existence of their organization. Like they got good when Vince Lombardi, then George Allen showed up. They got to a Super Bowl and were competitive. And then Joe Gibbs came in. So for about a 15 to 20 year period, the Washington Redskins were a world-class championship organization. The 30 to 40 years prior and the 30 years since, they've been largely non-competitive.
Correct, yeah.
So the vast majority of this organization's history has been more of this than it really was that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But that window carries you for so long.
Yeah.
And for the Warriors, they're going to have this forever.
Yes.
Forever.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens after Steph retires, if they get good players and they remain really good and keep good coaching and all that stuff and remain relevant, that's great for them. But if they don't, they're going to live off of this for a very long time. So you need to bottle it and have it. The Patriots are going to be able to do this forever.
Yeah.
They'll always be seen as a winner for a very, very, very... I know. They're idiots.
Did you see there's someone wearing
no idea how good you had it.
Someone wearing a sadness jersey customized
ridiculous.
Yesterday.
Sadness. Really?
Everybody's
What's
like,
wrong with you
No
people?
one feels sorry for you.
No one feels sorry for you. But you had the greatest run in NFL history by any organization ever outside of Lombardi's Packers. That's it.
All your other teams in the area are also championship
Paul
caliber
Brown's
teams.
Browns, George Halas's Bears, Vince Lombardi's Packers, and Bill Belichick's Patriots are the best runs of any organization ever, and they're sad today. And by the way, Belichick's still there, you dummies.
Yeah, right.
He's not even gone. It's not even like, remember that time? Remember that time? It's still happening, you idiots. Anyway, so I like, when I saw that, I felt like, how you felt. I'm like, you know what? He's just getting people who've won a lot in the room and hearing them out.
Correct.
How do we do this?
Exactly.
The other one is Rick Spielman. Rick Spielman's been around the league for a very long time. He did, in the press conference, if you listen closely, he said he's just part of the advisory committee, but he hinted but he might.
Yeah, right.
So I have a feeling he's going to end up in our front office. That's what I think is going to end up happening. Will he be the literal general manager? I don't know.
Yeah.
What they're looking at is hiring someone to run the football operation, who will then probably hire a GM. I suppose that could be Spielman, and more likely is going to be someone that person wants to hire who's young, and then at that point they'll go get a coach. I also want to point this out because Harris said it. I think this part of it's going to happen fast.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, within a week or two. Like, and because they already started that process. See, here's the thing that was going on all along. Rivera knew, I knew, they were going to split the duties. Rivera admitted it finally last week, right? Then we were like, that's kind of newsworthy because he finally said it. But Rivera was never going to retain control of the front office. What they gave him an opportunity to do was prove to us that you should remain the head coach of the team. And I think they gave him a fair shake at it. It failed. So they had no choice but to do what they did today. And we've known for weeks that was going to happen because of the way the thing skidded. But they had already started the poking around process of finding the right, who they believe will be head of the football operation for a while. And that's why they're ahead of the curve here on that part. And that's going to happen fast.
Yep.
The fact that this Adam Peters guy immediately agreed to take the interview with them tells me he's the leading candidate. One, it's out of San Francisco. Two, people talk about him, not unlike they talk about Ben Johnson as the potential coach, that they just feel like he's been ready for this. Three, like last year, teams tried to poach him and he wouldn't leave. Four, like it's out of that organization. And then seeing Bob Myers attached to him, I bet they know each other.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Myers has just been in the Bay Area for a very, very, very long time. This feels a little bit like, let's get this guy here to help convince this guy that he needs to come over here and join us.
He's also the only one that I've seen the literal interview is already set to happen tomorrow or Wednesday. Like that tells you everything you need to know, that he basically is already on the way here. And if they like him and he's the first choice, that's going to be a done deal. You
know, and then at that point, you want to ask him, who do you think should be the head coach? Which is why I don't think there's a front runner here. It's also why I really don't think they're going to get somebody like Harbaugh. I would put that at a very, very, very low percentage that he ends up being the coach here. I think they're going to go after one of these coordinators, either a first or second time head coach, and they're going to ask him, what do you think? It would be interesting if he does get the job. What do you think of Raheem Morris? You've competed against him the last couple of years, so you would know very well about him. Everybody loves this Ben Johnson guy and thinks that he's going to be, the next Shane Steichen or whatever. Like, they just think he's a head coach in waiting. People have felt that way for him for a while. I'm very interested in Mike McDonald. The Ravens defensive coordinator. I think what he's done and out of that organization will be very interesting. But this is going to come down to, what does this person think?
Right.
Which is why it's going to go in that order. I don't think we can project who the head coach is going to be until we know who's running the football operation. Harris hinted because we need to move fast and because this is fluid, we might have to do two things at once at the same time. But it is his preference, and I think it's the right thing to do. The person who runs the head of the football operation should be in charge of being in lockstep with the coach, and it shouldn't be one way or the other, which is why I don't think Harbaugh or Belichick's coming here. Belichick's not. Why I really don't think Harbaugh is. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
How would he be in lockstep with any of these candidates that they're talking about being the GM? They're not. And they're going to want to go into it knowing that we're going hand in hand here and we're working together. Lynch Shanahan. That's what they want. They want a group of people that they're on the same page. And Harbaugh's not walking in mouth breathing, telling them, oh, this is how we do it now. Right, guy? And points his finger at his chest. You can't have a power struggle. We've had this forever, the power struggle stuff. I'm done with that too. Can we get everybody on the same page?
Right.
And that's the other thing I liked hearing today. Can we get everybody on the same page for once? Because that's been holding this organization back for years. Nobody trusts each other for good reason.
Yeah.
People are hired and they don't trust their superiors. People are kept out of meetings and don't know what's going on. How in the world are you supposed to win if you're not on the same page?
That's right. Yeah, right.
Both sides of the building. Everybody. We're on the same team. The object is to do this together, which means you need to bring in people who want to work together and are willing to be open and honest with one another and stop this side of the building does this and this side of the building does that, and that person doesn't like this person over here and they don't like how they do it. What are we in high school? Right. How are you ever going to win if you're looking sideways at the people you work with every day, because that's how it's set up. And it sounds like this group understands that and doesn't want something like that to happen.
One thing I will add on the both Adam Peters and Ben Johnson is I'm just wondering this out loud. I wonder if there were agents that knew, because last hiring cycle, we knew the team was being sold, that some of them said, maybe you want to hold out because maybe that Washington job becomes up. Or if you don't like something right now, there's always going to be openings.
They had to know who was going to buy it.
Sure.
Because if Bezos buys it, it's a different story.
Right. But
Good or bad.
But I
don't
will say
know.
this, though. You have two guys, Johnson and Peters, that turned jobs down to return to wherever they were at. And part of it, too, was probably Carolina, too. Like, I have a feeling a lot of guys turned down Carolina because they don't want to deal with Tepper. But I'm just saying, now you have two guys that turn things down.
If I'm a first-time head coach, I'm not going to that job.
Correct.
I think someone who's been around the block needs to take that because he'll be able to understand how to deal with a personality like that. Like, they need the next Rivera to take that job to settle it down.
Funny enough.
In fact, I'm not so sure I wouldn't be like, you know what?
I think that fan base would lose
Settle
their
it
effing
down.
minds. I think
Rivera's wife will be like, you're doing this again? You nuts?
Right.
I got one other thing I want to talk about from Harris's past that I'll get to at the top of the hour, but I do want to spend a moment talking about the other firings around the NFL next. Bram, what's the show? ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, let's go through some of the other changes around the NFL today. Arthur Smith was fired by the Falcons last night.
12:02.
12:02. Black Monday. Boy, I guess Arthur Blank wanted to set a record on that one.
No time wasted there.
No, I do feel for him. Jameis Winston did a ridiculous thing at the end of that game yesterday where the Saints went into victory formation and scored a touchdown anyway, and I thought that was like beyond.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was thinking doing that. I thought that was terrible.
The
game was over. That was terrible.
It was because Jamal Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns last season. He had 0 this year. So they were trying to get him 1, and that was it.
Okay.
So
still.
I guess
this is not getting Terry McLaurin 17 yards.
I agree.
In like on a last play just to do it and then taking a knee and ending the game and explaining to them, we threw this pass so he could get 1,000 yards. Sorry if that bothered you, but we didn't try to score on you up 38-10.
Right.
Come on. Anyway, Art got fired. It's not a surprise. That was a down division. You kind of had to win it. And, the reality is they have studs on offense and they don't score points.
Right. And they don't use them.
They have a top 5 offensive line. They have a freak tight end, a freak running back, and a really good wide receiver, and they don't score. And he's an offensive head coach. What is he selling?
That's right. Exactly.
The second he and his coaches all did the dumb mustaches in like week 1, I went, he's done.
Yeah, he's finished.
He's a ding dong.
That's right.
You're a ding dong.
Right. He was also one of those coaches, though, too, he told you how smart he was.
Yes.
And that's always a dangerous game to play.
With the press, it definitely is.
Well, because once you have a season like this, they go,
really?
How smart are you? Because you have Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and the receiver, Drake London, and you have a crappy offense. And what do you have to say for yourself on that one?
I've said this, like, Rivera wasn't that way with us, but like he wanted to be right.
He picked his spots, but it wasn't that bad.
But you hang yourself with your messaging. I've been saying this about him for a while. Like, he's the one that used the word culture all the time.
Right.
And by using the word culture all the time, well, when you're 4-13, people start asking, what kind of culture do you have here?
Right.
And he's like, but. You have to be careful with what you say. In the case of Art is a defiant, you don't know what you're talking about. I've seen these guys before.
Yeah.
Well, when they lose, they get cornered.
Yep.
Because the press goes, you've been combative with me. You keep telling me like I'm stupid because I've only covered this for 25 years and don't know what I'm talking about. But sure, guy, you've recreated the game.
Right.
Let me ask you why you lost 27-7 to the worst defense in the league.
Right.
Let's hear your thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. And then it spirals because he can't be wrong. So he has to tell you why you're still wrong, even though they're losing.
Yep.
So I think they did what they had to do. And not unlike, with Washington, I think it's a pretty attractive spot.
Agreed.
Because you are going to walk into a situation where you've got a pretty good team. They don't have a quarterback.
Sure.
So Washington's is very interesting because with the number 2 pick, it does scream to me, I am very interested in this Mike McDonald guy, but Ben Johnson, if you're looking for a fresh start with an open slate, you get to say to him, it might not be Caleb Williams. It might be.
Right.
But it might not be. But you can pick anybody you want.
Exactly.
Are you interested in that?
Right. Exactly.
And if this guy likes Drake May or Jaden Daniels, or maybe Williams. Depended, because maybe the Bears are open to a trade.
He likes
Who knows?
Penix.
Correct.
Right.
We can get that for you.
Yep.
We can get any of those for you, and it won't cost us anything.
Yeah.
If you want Caleb, tell us, and we will make the calls and find out if that's a possibility. However, if you're psyched about Drake May, you think he's going to have a big pro career, well, guess what?
Right.
We draft him,
We got him.
not give up anything. You could start from scratch. We got a lot of cap room. We've got a viable front office. You'll see. I think this is going to be an extremely attractive thing. With Atlanta, is their setup going to be like that? I don't know. But I think they have a pretty good roster, and I think they underachieved personally. So I think the next coach that comes in there, I think, has an opportunity to turn things around fast, and they can make friends real fast when they give Bijan the ball 20 times a game.
Well, you also have a situation where if you were to take the Washington job, you've got some tough sledding. You have the Eagles and the Cowboys in the division. You have the Giants who have honestly rooked this team the last couple of years. Step into the Falcons, you could win that division literally next year if you coach well enough, because no one's stepping up. Like, the Buccaneers overachieved a little bit. Baker's comfortable, but he doesn't scare anybody. So you can literally walk into that job and win the division next season if you think that you're confident enough.
There's been nothing else.
Yeah.
That's it. There already were openings. Carolina's open, Chargers open, Raiders open.
Yep.
So there already were 3 others. The Bears haven't done anything yet, so I guess we'll see.
Yep.
The Patriots haven't done anything yet. We'll have to see. Belichick did do a press conference today and did admit that he is open to giving up personnel control.
Yep.
I have felt all along that he will not be going anywhere. I have felt all along that he will break that coaching record, and I think that's him. He never says anything. Him acknowledging that he is willing to do that part just to continue coaching tells me everything I need to know.
Yeah.
Kraft wants him to break this record in that uniform on that sideline. And that's what I think is going to end up happening, because I don't think there's going to be a robust market for him, who you're going to have to spend however much money, however much control he's going to actually want. And if he's saying now, I'm willing to give up personnel control, would he be willing to do that somewhere else?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. Are you going to pay him the biggest salary in the league at 70-something, knowing he's only going to be there a few years? Maybe, maybe not. Do you like the way his team has been coached the last few years? Because they've lost a lot.
Well, it could have been.
I don't think it's going to be a robust market for he's not coming here.
Right.
We're not looking at him to be the head coach of the team, and he's certainly not getting personnel control. So we're the biggest open market, biggest attractive thing happening, because all the new and they're saying all the right things. They got the cap room, they got the number 2 pick, they've got the openings to fill the GM and the coach. They're not even looking at him.
Yeah, well, I think that was for both sides. That was not only for the Patriots, but also prospective teams to say that I'm willing to concede that. Because I think that's been our number one hang-up, is who's actually going to give him the power to take over a franchise? Nobody, honestly.
I could see Carolina, Tepper going, I need to get somebody in here.
They fire him after a year or two because he wouldn't be happy with who they draft, So
Correct.
I'm just saying, I think he sees the writing on the wall too. Maybe that he just knows as well. Maybe he also has had this realization of, you know what, give me a better player and I can still coach him. It doesn't matter if I picked him or not. Maybe he's had that kind of thought process sitting through the year. So
there's been nobody else yet. I don't think there's anybody obvious. I was waiting to see what the Bears.
Like Wink Martindale resigned.
Wink Martindale resigned. I actually think that's good for the Giants. I don't think that's a good match. I think when you have an aggressive person like that, you need to have an offense that can back it up. And it's a liability. Dan Quinn is perfect for Dallas. They're extremely aggressive. They get a ton of turnovers, but they're apt to give up a lot of points because of the way that they play.
Right.
But that's okay, because their offense is capable of scoring a ton of points. So on an off day for their defense can make up for it.
Yeah.
On a good day for their defense, they can't be beat, right? The Giants aren't that way. The Giants are sell out, blitz heavy, and their offense, if their defense gets beat a few times, their offense is not capable of coming back. I actually think they're better served. They need to get a less aggressive defensive coordinator like that to settle it down and have more complementary football. They need to be in close games. They do not have an explosive offense that can make up for a bad defensive game.
When it comes to the Giants, this is what they need to fill after today. Their defensive coordinator, their special teams coordinator, they fired him last night. Their offensive line coach, their outside linebackers coach, their running backs coach, and their strength and conditioning director.
Wow.
They fired all of those people, which tells me that they must have said to Dayball, what are you going to do here? Because something needs to give. But that's a lot of
That's
people
a
that
lot.
you've cleared out there. That's crazy.
Without firing the head coach.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I actually think Dayball, my gut is he's a pretty good head coach.
Right. I think honestly, the DeVito stuff saved him because everyone was going, you just took an undrafted rookie free agent and you won a few games with them.
The Maras, though, have been getting a lot of heat. They keep firing coaches after 2 years.
Right.
And and everyone's been on them about, like, you don't stick with anybody. So I think they kind of had to.
They won a playoff game last year. So I mean,
they did.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of have to stick this through to shut everybody up and say, stop being so flip and changing everything all the time. But this is the same thing by turning over his staff.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
One thing I would say is this, though, is you get to bring in all these new people and you get out of Daniel Jones after this year. So maybe they're even saying to Dayball, we know you're kind of tied this year to this guy for one more year. And then if you
I didn't think they should have signed him. I said this last year. I
Correct.
said, you're making a mistake doing this. I think
Right.
once it gets to that price point, this is Brad.
Yeah.
Once you get to this price point, you kind of need to move on or you're going to get anchored to him.
Yeah.
And they got anchored to him.
So what I think is happening here is they're saying to Dayball, make whatever changes you think or make some changes, and we know you're stuck with dimes, and then we'll go get you the quarterback next year depending on how it goes.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at with him.
All right, I'll get back into what Josh Harris said today next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So Josh Harris held about a 20-minute press conference today announcing the firing of Ron Rivera after 4 years as the Commanders' lone voice in the front office. And as the head coach, team ended up with 13 losses. That ties a franchise record for a single season. It's the same number of losses they had the year before he was hired. That's quite an indictment of the end of the tenure here to go out like that. And I mean, not unlike that last year with Jay Gruden and Bill Callahan, they got smoked a number of times.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
It wasn't even just that they lost the games. They went 1-7 at home. They got blown out by the Cowboys at home. The Giants game was an utter embarrassment. They had 6 turnovers and lost to Tommy DeVito at home. They got blown out by the Bears, who hadn't won in a calendar year at home on a nationally televised lone window game.
Right.
Al's in the booth. Al's pissed.
By the way, we play the Bears
Yeah.
again next year. Thursday night again, boys.
Please. No more of that.
Please don't do
That
that
doesn't need
again.
to be an annual thing. I mean, what else happened? The Dolphins roasted them at home.
And it was
The 49ers
Yep.
game was not close
Yep.
at home. The majority of the home games were blowouts.
and they sold out every single one, by the way.
The Eagles game they were semi-competitive for a while. They scored.
you knew.
They were down 2 touchdowns and scored in the last minute
Yeah,
and
yeah.
made it a 1-score game. They were competitive for a while, but that one got
But
away
everyone
from
knew
them too.
Everyone knew they had the lead, but
That's it.
but knew the Eagles were going to come. So I mean,
And I don't know how you could sell moving forward. You know, like you got the all-time goodwill you've been waiting for in your 4 years. The sale of the team. You got an ownership group in that's from here and was wildly applauded, and were like they were going to throw a parade for these people. They're saying all the right things. They're doing all the right things. They're being patient with you, letting you, put out there, show us your vision and show us how you're going to make us better. And in all the home games, this was the worst home season they've had in years.
right.
The games weren't even close.
Exactly.
They were blown out by every single team they played here, with the exception of the Cardinals, who they barely beat in what should have been Coronation Day.
Correct.
Remember? Everybody came out of the woodwork.
Yes, it was the only game where I think it was majority Washington fans, right? I don't think there was another game that was majority.
No, yeah, I remember going into it, they were like, we know the Cardinals fans won't buy these tickets.
Right.
Like, we're like,
But
we know we're not going to get a traveling fan base here. But then there was all the excitement of the sale that all the tickets that were available were literally bought by fans of the team because they were like, oh my God, things have changed.
Well, but even you and I talked, because I go to games as a fan, and you, of course, call them. You and I would reconvene on Mondays and be like, there's a lot of Bills fans there. Oh,
I knew that. But I said that in the spring. I went. The Bills fans travel. Those tickets went on sale in the spring. They bought them.
But then there were a few others.
So
where,
you're not gonna get them out of there. It's gonna take a couple of years for that to happen.
Right, but we had a few others though where it was like, man, there were a lot of Bears fans for a Thursday night game.
Uh-huh.
Like it was like, wait
Who
a
were
minute,
0-4,
Yes.
haven't won it. Like
Yes,
you think of all
perennially
things.
sucked.
You like the Bears fans are like, you want to get on the Beltway and go see
Right.
them play
Right.
after the way we played the Eagles. You want to go see that? I
Exactly.
guess you do.
Right. And so there was a few of those
Yeah.
where you're like, ooh, this is a little bit ugly. The Dolphins game.
Tons.
It was 70% Dolphins fans.
Dan
So-
Marino came on the field. You would have thought you were in the
Yes.
Clevelander.
Right.
Like it was. People went crazy.
So, yeah.
It's so hard to watch, to look up and see that, but it's been going on for years.
Yeah, of
And,
course.
it's a trend around the NFL, but it's been pronounced here. And Harris made a mention of it, like not enough of our people were there. And
Sure.
again, there's
And
a
he
push
said
to
that's
get
on
everybody
us,
back.
which is all we ever really
That's on us.
want you to acknowledge.
Correct. It's on us. Yeah, it's not on you. It's on us.
That's Bruce, how that one goes.
We need to make this a place you want to be.
What did Bruce say? Remember he was like, oh, those fans
Resale.
they made a lot of money
They
or
made
something.
a lot of money.
And it was like, yeah, dummy, that's their right to do that.
Yeah. You're not giving us something to root for.
The energy.
You guys are 0-5.
The energy is so, it's just, it was refreshing.
So different.
Yeah, it was refreshing today to just finally have yeah, too many opposing fans. That's on us.
Yeah. So Josh Harris doesn't do a lot of these. I don't expect him to do a lot of these. I did like how he ended the press conference going to be continued, which is we're going to do this again when I introduce whoever our football operations coach, all that stuff. Great. Okay. He did also, there was one thing that also stuck out to me, and it bringing up that he doesn't do a lot of them. This is what actually I'd like to talk to him about, because his first real foray into ownership is the 76ers, right? And the 76ers at the beginning of his tenure did do something extremely unusual. They hired Sam Hinkie, and they did what ended up being called trust the process, of which they tanked purposefully and badly for a long period of time, ended up getting a number of very high draft picks, only one of which actually worked out.
That's all you need, though.
Right.
In that sport.
Correct. It ended up being, but the whole idea was we're going to get 4 of these guys, and we're going to be an unstoppable force. You're not going to be able to beat us. We're going to be too good. Well, one ended up being Markelle Fultz. He was out of there within a couple of years. His shot was broken very early. One of them is Embiid, who's turned out to be a stud superstar. You know, who are the others? I can't remember now. Nerlens Noel, who's turned into a backup at best.
Sure. Yep. Right. Exactly.
Right. And then there was another one. Who's the guy from Duke who turned out to kind of flame out and just ended up being very average? He was like a forward. He was very average. And so the process thing clearly did not go anywhere near as planned. Fortunately for them, they got a top 10 to top 5 player in Embiid, which has allowed them to be very relevant over the last.
Ben Simmons.
Yeah, well, Ben Simmons, he's another one. He broke. He broke, couldn't handle either Philadelphia, whatever it was. He broke. He's never recovered from it. They had to move on from him.
Yep.
There's Okafor, Jahlil Okafor. He's another one. So they had 5 top 5 picks. Only one of them has even turned into a starter, let alone a star.
Yeah, right.
A few of them are broken.
Yes.
And are barely in the NBA or reserves, right? So there's it's no guarantee of anything. But he did do that, and he believed in that and was bought into, let's do this. I would love to talk to him about that experience and how it shapes thinking about starting over here, because everything I've heard today and everything that they're literally doing and the people they're talking to, they're not even thinking about some kind of crazy outside the box, we're going to reinvent football.
Sure. Right.
Which is also reassuring. Mm-hmm. I would assume he learned his lesson from that he bought into something that was either ahead of its time or crazy, or maybe a little bit of both. Because the whole idea of tanking, universally acceptable now in that sport. You're not allowed to do it, but it's accepted. You kind of have to do it.
Correct.
That's what the Wizards are doing right now.
Right.
I mean, we're all aware of it. They have a team that maybe should be a touch better than this, but not much more than better than this. And we know why. It's all for the purpose of getting the higher draft picks with the opportunity to do this. What they did was overt. And they allowed somebody, a mathematician, to walk in and say, and this is why in 4 years, if you let me do this, you're going to have a team that is literally unbeatable.
Yep.
And they haven't had anything even remotely close to that. They've had a good team with one great player. They had to get Harden to give him a chance to be elevated. Now they're lucky that Maxi's pretty good, but they're still nowhere really near the top echelon. They're there. They're a playoff team. They're competitive. Yeah. I would love to talk to him about that, because it's another thing I heard today that I liked. He's learned his lesson. I'm not going to reinvent this. What I need to do is go tried and true with people who have won before, listen to them, and hear them out on how to do this.
Yeah, right, exactly. I would say this too, though. Just the difference between those two leagues, they are completely different on how you can win year to year.
Correct.
Like we've seen it in the NFL.
I think that's why the question about Myers was, how does this correlate? Because the truth is, if you get a Steph Curry, things kind of change overnight automatically.
Right, but I think we look at other teams like the Ravens, like the Niners, like those premier type teams where they're doing both. They make the moves they need to make short term, but never really lose the long term vision. You've got to do both in the NFL. And I think here it's been nip tuck, duct tape, whatever you want to call it. It's a constant, we can't blow up a little bit here. We need to constantly tape it together and make a run for it. And if everything holds together, we might be able to win a playoff game. Whereas now there's going to be a new mindset of you're going to have to maybe make a small little sacrifice right now, but it's going to be for the greater good. And once you get that train back on the track, you are good to go for a long time.
He avoided a landmine today. It was another question of how quick can this turn around?
Yeah, right.
And I thought he avoided that very well, because this is what I would say to even asking that question. And the way he basically answered it was, we're going to put the right people in place. We're going to make a lot of decisions. We know that a lot of big ones are happening right now. We got the number 2 draft pick. We got a lot of draft capital. We have money to spend, and we have a very open roster to kind of turn over. And we're in this aggressive, we're going to find who we think are best and brightest of the business right now to run our front office and be our coaches. Okay. So like all those things are happening at once. That doesn't mean that next year they go 10-7.
Right.
And he knows that. And I appreciated that he said, I don't know what those timelines look like. Like, let's see what we get in place. Let's see what our team looks like. Like, you can't magically make this happen. You got to have the players to win. And we may not have a full roster, because I think what we've learned through this year was the roster was mismanaged to a degree that I don't think it's as bad that it should have had 4 wins, but it's not a Super Bowl team, and it wasn't close to one. And it got mismanaged in certain spots in a way that it's going to take some time. And so anybody who thinks that they're going to flip around and be great next year, let me see what the roster looks like. I'm glad that he said that. Don't put an arbitrary timeline on yourself and hang yourself with, within 2 years, we should be vying for division titles in a Super Bowl. Don't say that when half of the roster you have now that's 4-13 is not under contract. You don't even know what your team's going to look like next year.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I was glad to hear him do that too, to not arbitrarily put himself in a corner. He's done this before. This is the best part. There's 2 things about this ownership group that I loved. One, from here, so they know the history. It's important to them. It's clearly their baby.
Yeah,
they want this thing to be good and everybody be proud of it. It's so obvious. It's not just words. Like you can feel it. Like they want this to be, and that's important. That's really important. 2, they've done this before across the board. He's done this before. Magic has done this before. Mark Hines kind of done this before, at least locally. Maybe not on this level, but he's been in professional sports. He understands this. Mitchell Rales has owned a lot of different things. This is new, but like he's not a rash person. These people want this team to be good, but they are not walking in here and screaming and yelling and wondering, we just paid $6 billion. Why aren't we good overnight? They seem to understand that there's a process here, and this process is going to be shaped by mistakes that's why I bring up Hinkie. Mistakes that were made in the past that won't be replicated. They seem to want to have a lot of smart people in the room, that they want to come to consensus decisions, even if they have to be made fast, and they want everybody to be on board. We got the right guys. And then I firmly believe they're going to put in what is so necessary here, a positive support system for these people to do their jobs in conjunction with one another, because that has not been here for too long. The hardest part of being around this team every day is seeing the divisive working against one another nature that has occurred in this building for years. How are you going to win if you don't trust the guy in the office next to you?
Yep, right.
How?
Yeah.
And that dates back to Snyder. And frankly, it carried over into this Rivera thing.
Yeah.
He closed the circle tight.
Yeah.
I understand why. Snyder's reputation preceded himself. He felt like he had to make it a very tight thing and try his best to like keep it that way. But after a while, at some point, he needed help. He refused to bring the help in that he needed. And there were other parts of the building that were clearly not working in conjunction with them.
Absolutely.
That never leads to winning. Everybody's got to be on the same page. You don't have to agree with what everybody does, but you've got to be on the same page with one another. And if you're working against one another or working in the shadows to undermine people, this has been going on so long there. It's no wonder their record is what it is over the last 25 years. Nobody trusted anybody.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And that's got to change. And I get the feeling these people genuinely want them to win. I think Dan did too. Genuinely want them to win. But is willing to put in a positive support system to go, we're not going to agree on everything, but we're going to move forward together when we make these decisions, and everybody's going to be on the same page. And that is beyond refreshing to hear it, because this team has needed it for decades now, have an attitude like that.
The difference, too, though, with Dan is at some point Dan was basically okay with the ship running itself. That was always...
He eventually was like,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. I clearly don't have the answers.
Right.
I've spent millions upon millions
Right.
of dollars. Every time someone tells me to do something, whether it's good advice or bad advice, I just do it, and then it blows up, and everyone yells at me, and then I do something rash to change it, and they say I'm dysfunctional.
Right. Well, and so what I'm getting at there, though, is at some point losing became okay. Like, he wasn't even getting mad about things. And at that point, that's when everyone pretty much said the organization was broken, because at some point, well, if I don't win or lose, why should I put that much work in, or why should I put in that extra effort, or why should I care about the little thing? You know, like, this is that's any workplace. I say this constantly about the organization. They had problems that any basic workplace has, and no duh, it was broken because they weren't doing those types of things. The other part here, too, that I liked about with Harris was today, and piggybacking off what you said, where he said he doesn't really know the timeline. That tells me he's been listening to what the fan base has said, and he's also been listening to what Ron Rivera has made mistakes on. And that's Rivera doing the whole, I need to build up the team, and then I'll drop a quarterback in. And then all of a sudden...
And then that tune changed.
Well, yeah, right. And then it
because
was also,
that didn't work, so now he's got to change his
correct.
tune.
And it was, let me just put all the pressure on a fifth-round pick that has one star underneath his belt. Like, I think Harris heard what Ron did, and then he heard... I think not only here on our airwaves, but on other places too, a lot of times we're waiting for you to trip, so then we go, all right, well, now I have to criticize you because you said A, B, and C, and now X, Y, and Z happened.
Yes.
And that's essentially what, honestly, when the floodgates opened on Rivera, it was because he stepped in his own you-know-what.
Constantly.
Because he would say something, we'd go, all right, dude, you said it, so we have to break it down, and it was his own fault a lot of times.
One of the things that I talked about a lot with people who worked with the organization all the time was he just talked too much.
Yes. Yes, constantly.
All the time. And
even last week he did it.
Part of it is it's just he's trying to be accommodating, actually. He genuinely wants to be accommodating. He has a weird way of going about it sometimes, but he does. And he is, like, everybody will say this. You heard this again today. It was. I've said this a million times. It was hard for me not to root. I saw the mistakes he was making, and I'm like, and I may not know what the right, organizational thing looks like. I do know with a lot of experience what the wrong thing looks like.
Yeah.
And it's why every year I'm like, I don't like what they're doing this going into the season because I've seen this before. Like, I'm watching what's happening in Carolina going, I can tell you the next 8 chapters of this one, how they're going to go, because I've seen it. I know what wrong looks like. And Ron kept getting in his own way over and over. And some of it was, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, he talked too much about everything. Yeah. He defended everything. And he put these spins and messages on things that I would hear him say it, and I go, if that doesn't work out, they're going to hang you with it.
Right.
And I tried, actually, the first couple of years, I tried because I would talk to him on the side privately. And I tried to, hint to him like, hey, maybe you shouldn't bring up, like this. All in the name of I'm trying to help you message to the media who I know and what they're going to do if you're wrong about this. You're making a bet publicly. And when you make a bet public, when you don't have to, and when you do it, it means it better be right. And if you're right, they'll give you credit for it. But if you're wrong, it's the headline of every column.
Right.
We're
the
talking.
Comes down.
Explain what culture means. He used that word so many times that nobody even knows exactly what it means. You know what it means to me? A team that you're proud of that wins a lot.
Yep, right. Gives 110%. Yep.
And to him, I don't know what it means.
Right.
He kept saying he changed the culture. Changed it from what?
Right.
Because if it's wins and losses, that actually didn't happen. His win percentage is worse than Jay Gruden's.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You won 4 games in a show me year.
Correct. So what does culture mean?
Right, and your player, by the way.
What are you talking about?
By the way, your culture said enough that your players like to go to you for certain things.
Yes.
And then in the final year, they went to you over your assistant head coach, offensive coordinator. You didn't do anything about it. So you went back on your culture, actually, is really what happened, too.
Yes. That was his biggest mistake in the last year. I could name all the big mistakes through all the years, but this past year, his biggest mistake was he took his hands off the wheel. He entrusted people he'd never worked with before that he thought would be an answer for him. That's never the answer. The answer is if you really want to be the head coach here beyond this season, you need to prove to this new ownership group that you are in complete full control and you let others control your destiny. It's hard for me to empathize with your firing today.
Yeah.
As much as I like the man a lot.
No,
I think he's an extremely high character guy. I think he dealt with things that a lot of which we know about and a lot of which we don't, that were going on in the background that he had to deal with. That's an 80-hour week job. That's an 80-hour week job. He had a 300-hour a week job. That's what he had.
Yeah.
He did. And for that, I was always rooting for him because I know what kind of character he is and I know what kind of person he is. And I know that he's a good football coach and I know he's a really good motivator. But he made the types of mistakes every single year that I just wish I could have said to him, this is not going to work out for you.
Yep.
You are putting in a giant bet on things that you should not be putting a giant bet on. You don't go and bring in the broken quarterback to fix the offense. You don't turn over everything to a coach you've never worked with before, even as much as you may like him or think that he might be the answer. You're the person in charge here. You need to remain that way. And if you're going to remove yourself from it, it's hard for me to empathize when you go 4-13.
That's right. Yeah.
You're not even the answer for them. How are you the answer for us? Why are you answering the questions?
Or how about just rewinding one of the hits? You have your one people's champ quarterback that you brought in on a whim, took Tom Brady to the limit, yet every time the media asked you about him, you had something crappy to say about him, essentially. And it was like, dude, just take what he's giving you. He's giving you more than anyone would have dreamed of. And it was like, everything he spoke about, he couldn't do right. It was always the wrong answer for pretty much everything.
His inclinations, they're always late.
Yes.
He was late to make changes, and when he did make them, oftentimes, boy, did he pick the wrong side.
Yes, yeah,
it was uncanny.
It was ground zero most of the time when he would make the change. It was like,
when
what?
he finally, it was, what should be little things, it turned into big things. When he finally cut Dustin Hopkins, when he finally did that, he didn't have a backup kicker.
Yeah.
And it turned into a disaster.
Yes.
You don't have an NFL kicker on your roster now. Well, why did you get rid of him?
Yeah.
I understand why you got rid of him, but you didn't have an NFL kicker to back it up with.
Right.
He finally removed the long snapper after a full season.
After it was going bad in training camp.
It was terrible over and over and over. He finally did it.
When he changed his form, by the way. And everyone's like, why
would you do that?
Why are you changing your form?
Why are you trying to throw a knuckle curve now? Like, just snap it to him. Just do that. It was fine before.
One that always irked me, and you know where I'm probably going to go with this, is you had one of the best returners in the league in DeAndre Carter, and you just cut him, or you didn't sign him back for no money.
And didn't replace him.
Still don't have a replacement.
No, you haven't had a replacement since. The offensive line was mismanaged.
Oh, my God, yeah. That just got worse and worse.
The defense of Trey Turner, Andrew Norwell, and it was so hard for me because I'm sitting here and I'm like, I know I'm not stupid, and I know what I see, and I can't say it.
Right.
But, like, I knew this wasn't going to work out.
Right.
Like, if you told me they were backups, I'd have been like, great. We have veteran backups just in case. And if they have to play a game or two, I'm sure we'll be fine. You're starting with them? Both of them.
Both of them.
Really? Okay. It just, the decision making was off.
We didn't even mention the...
and he made these bets, and every time he made them, I'm like, this is not going to cash in. It just isn't.
Forgot one of the greatest hits. We can be eliminated today.
Oh, well. That is a whole different...
I mean...
It's
a part of the attention to detail, though.
I know.
You just read that on the game notes going into the game. Like,
well, a couple weeks ago, because it was already set in stone what was going to happen, But when he said before the 49ers game he hadn't watched tape of the 49ers defense, and I remember sitting there going, I don't think anybody's going to make a big deal of this because they're out of the playoffs. Everyone knows they're going to lose, and everyone knows what his fate is.
Yeah.
But imagine if he said that when they were a playoff game on the line.
Right.
People would be like, what? What do you mean? You're the head coach of the team? You haven't watched their defense the whole week?
These are times where you just lie.
Yeah. Just tell me Nick Bosa is good, man.
Yeah. where you
that Fred Warner guy, he's a problem.
And where you say, if you don't know, I am the defensive coordinator, so I really watch more of their offense. But yeah, they've got some stud pass rushers over there. It ain't hard to sidestep the question.
It's so hard. It's so hard because I so genuinely like him. But the mistakes were just like, oh, God, like this is going to blow up in your face. And then when you keep talking about it to the media, I'm like, they're going to hang you with your words. That's how this works. Yeah. They're going to hang you with your words.
Yeah.
All right, let me take a quick break. We'll review the final regular season weekend next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, let's review the final weekend of the regular season and get set for the playoffs, which start this weekend. Steelers beat the Ravens, not a surprise because the Ravens didn't play any of their guys, but of course, as we figured, would make it close, and they did. That was a terrible rainstorm that was going on up there, but the Steelers win, and because they got some help, they're now in the playoffs. So Tomlin and company, he does it again, 10-7 with a junk quarterback situation, and they get into the playoffs.
There's a fun little thing going around with Steelers fans. The Jags played in Pittsburgh. And I guess one of their players took a terrible towel and was swinging it on the field after they beat them, and they won whatever they went down the stretch. They only won like 1 or 2 games since that game, so they're calling it like a terrible towel curse or something like that. So
see? I haven't heard anything. We haven't heard anything about old Douglas P.
I don't think he's going to
get
fired.
They flamed out of there pretty bad. I don't think so either, but there wasn't any like rumblings of it. Nobody even mentioned it on the pregame shows yesterday like he was in any kind of trouble, but there was part of me that was kind of like, boy, if they flame out and not win that division, is he going to be in trouble?
I don't think so. I mean, that comeback win, I feel like gets you a year.
I guess.
From last playoffs.
Yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, I will say this. There was one funny thing. Obviously, Shad Khan, he owns AEW, who we've had like Britt Baker on here on our airwaves before.
Yeah, his son's like a big prominent forward,
his son runs,
front forward person.
Yeah, he runs AEW. And one of the WWE accounts yesterday, obviously competing company, quote retweeted the Jags tweet of saying, playoff tickets on sale now, of like, you sure about that?
Oh.
Which I thought was, full meta. I mean, we're talking
that's pretty
wrestling
good.
and NFL collide. I thought that was amazing.
I'm into that. Texas beat the Colts 23-19 in a crazy ending. I feel bad. I mean, they threw a 4th and 1 pass to a guy I've never heard of.
Right.
And then he dropped it.
Yes.
And then, he probably cried, which was terrible. But the Texans win, and I actually think this is a good outcome for me. C.J. Stroud, rookie year in the playoffs, rookie coach in the playoffs. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think they get Cleveland, which is very interesting. But, it's cool. So I'm happy for them. I think that's very cool.
I will say this, though. I feel bad for the Texans. Did you know every single time they've made the playoffs, they have played that first game? Every single time on Saturday.
Because nobody wants to watch them, really.
Right. They've been to the playoffs 7 times, all as the AFC South winner. All 7 have been the Saturday first game on wild card weekend.
This game itself ought to give everybody a lot of hope here, by the way, too. They've had here's dysfunctional ownership, both places, right? One was a mega church for a while. The other one's darts.
Right.
Darts, okay? Yeah. Rocket sciences, sausages. Yeah. Hired Jeff Saturday last year. Remember that? That was last year that happened. Both of them got a brand new rookie quarterback in 1 year. One of them got hurt for the entire season, basically, right? But both of them have a rookie quarterback. Both of them have a brand new head coach, and both of them were playing for a playoff spot, and one's got a home game this year. So this is, if you want to feel good about what might happen next fall and a quick turnaround, Texans Colts week 18 ought to tell you everything you need to know that you can flip it around enough to be competitive. Sure. And both of them were. Bengals beat the Browns. Browns didn't play anybody because they were locked into the 5 seed. Winner of the day, Jake Browning's girlfriend.
Well, Jake Browning, because of his girlfriend.
His girlfriend wore a one
piece, like bodysuit.
Bodysuit.
Yeah, it was a bodysuit.
She wore a white bodysuit.
Very tight.
Very tight.
Silver, actually.
Was it? Oh, it was silver?
Yeah, it was silver.
And she had like an orange hat on.
Yeah.
She was dressed like a Bengal. And
the band.
I liked it. I liked it.
She was very easy on the ice.
Yeah. Yeah. Brent Musburger should have been calling that
Would have
game.
had a field day.
She's gorgeous.
Yes, he would have been. She is lovely.
I think I saw a lot of people writing. She knew what she was doing when she left the house this morning.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely.
she did.
Absolutely.
9-8, but they don't make the playoffs. Every team in that division ended up over 500. That's quite an accomplishment too. Lions beat the Vikings because they played everybody because Dan Campbell does that.
Yeah.
And they get the 3 seed, so nothing really changed for them.
Couple
but
guys
they
got
beat the
banged
Vikings.
up though. It was kind
Sam
of dangerous.
Laporta got hurt,
Yeah.
and now he's in question.
Yeah.
They are still a little unhinged. I mean, what they did in Dallas the week before, then they played everybody. Now one of their starters gets hurt. They really had nothing to gain. I got to tell you, like, the way they've kind of swooped in at the end of the season screams to me. That's what I said about what they did in Dallas. I'm like, you do that in a playoff game, your season just ends, and then everybody goes, that was nuts.
Right.
Why'd you do that?
Right. I'm just saying, a little unhinged end of the year. Now who's staring at them in the face?
Right.
Your old friend Matt Stafford.
Yeah. I mean, the playoff matchups they're too good to be true.
I'm just saying, like, that one, if
the
I'm
script got it right.
Yeah.
McCarthy gets Green Bay.
Yes.
Stafford goes to Detroit.
Like,
goes to Detroit.
You can put them out of their misery. Like,
Yes. We're a step away from Flacco in Baltimore. We are literally a step away from that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's
so
a possibility.
I'm just saying Lions fans are losing it this week.
It's
I'd be
really,
nervous as hell.
It's amazing. I predicted this. Titans beat the Jaguars. I saw the way the Jags were playing. They were skidding the wrong way.
Yeah.
Tannehill's last game up, the second I heard he was starting, I'm like, that guy's going to go out a winner. Watch.
Yeah.
Watch. Derrick Henry's going to go out a winner. Neither one of them are going to be there. Those guys won a lot of games together. 2 years ago, they were the 1 seed.
Yep.
They won a lot of games together. I think the Titans would be nuts to walk away from Mike Vrabel, but that sounds like they're talking about it, which may be, I want things done a certain way or I want to be moved somewhere else. And he is going to be a massive hot commodity if he is literally available. Those guys play for that dude. He might be the next coach of the Patriots if he's available.
Could be. 2 things on this one. If I had known they were going to hand the microphone to Derrick Henry at the end of the game, that he was going to say goodbye to the crowd, I would have said Titans by a million. Yeah. I did not know that was a thing. Like, they gave the microphone to him at the 50-yard line. He said, thanks for the best 8 years of my life.
Yeah.
If I had known that, Titans by a million.
Yes.
Like, that was easy pick there.
Yes.
Vrabel's always good for a couple of these wins. I thought he'd used too many of them going into this game, but clearly they were good to go. On the Jags front, by the way, Calvin Ridley dropped like a wide open pass in the last 2 minutes of the game, and that was it. Like it was like 2 minutes left. He dropped it. They were finished.
Jets beat the Patriots in like a worthless NFL game in the snow.
Snapped their 15-game losing streak, 16-game losing streak to the Patriots.
Yesterday, we had Terry McLaurin last minute, got the yardage he needed to get over 1,000 because everybody was screaming this has to happen because he became the first ever to do it 4 years in a row in the franchise's history. Apparently, Breece Hall finished 4 yards short of 1,000. And Robert Saleh today said, our mathematicians got it wrong, and we thought he already had it.
Oh, no.
So that sucks.
That's terrible.
That's as Jets as it gets. Yeah. That they just were like, because he had a 50-yard touchdown. He had 178, and he fell 4 yards short of 1,000, and it was because they weren't paying attention that he was that close to it to get it.
Dagger.
Jets win, and then, the way the Cowboys-Commanders game started, we were like a little worried, like, oh, no, we're not going to give up the 2-seed, are we? Saints beat the Falcons. Art is out. Saints don't make it. That's a disappointment. Dennis Allen apparently is staying, which I guess is the right thing to do.
They got a weird offseason with that decision, by the way.
With
the
Carr?
With the Jameis thing at the end at the end of the game, going against him.
That was terrible what he did. That was really they scored a worthless touchdown in a blowout. I don't know why they did that.
But what I'm saying is you go against your head coach heading into the offseason like that. That's a little wonky.
I think you move on. Buccaneers beat the Panthers 9-0. That's not it's not awe-inspiring going into the playoffs, but they're going to play the Eagles who have cratered. That's the weirdest playoff game of the weekend for sure.
Yep.
Packers get in, 17-9 winners over the Bears. Everybody thought Justin Fields would have some crazy going out game. He didn't.
Yep, right.
I think the writing's on the wall there. I think they're taking Caleb. I think they're going to start the clock over, and they're going to trade Justin Fields for whatever they can get, and I don't think it will be here. I think we're going to stick at number 2 and probably take Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whichever one, whoever the new coach is in love with.
I think no matter what, the Bears should say they're going to take Williams to bait someone into trading up. I don't know why.
Well, I think they're going to get crazy
debate.
packages.
Yeah,
like, they don't need to. I don't think they need to say what they're going to do, but I think this is what they're going to do.
Okay,
in
fair
the
enough.
end. That's what I think is going to happen. Raiders beat the Broncos 27-14. They're making the case for Antonio Pierce. I don't think he's going to get the job personally, but like we'll see what happens.
Right.
Giants beat the Eagles.
They did not rest their starters, by the way.
When I saw it was 24-0 in the first half, I'm like, wow.
Yep. Right.
Like, what's wrong with those dudes?
Hurts messed his finger up.
Go Birds.
A.J. Brown hurt his knee. Like, there are all these crazy things that happened in that game,
What
too.
in the world happened to them? Whatever that end story is going to be amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I told
they
you.
were 10-1.
I told you, all eyes on Roseman. Roseman's going to do something to fix that team because he always knows what's wrong.
I said I'll give Sirianni one more year. I'm not so sure anymore. I actually think if they lose to the Buccaneers,
it's on the table.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
If they lose and lose bad to the Buccaneers, I got a funny feeling they will make a change.
Yes, absolutely. I've been saying this for 2 weeks now. I think everything's on the table for them.
Seahawks beat the Cardinals 21-20. Pete Carroll says he wants to still coach that team. There's not much heat about him going anywhere, so they'll probably run it back. Your boy Gannon, the bus. You take the bus. That was a good one all year.
He's playing hard all year. I'll give him credit on that.
Lost to the last minute there. Yeah. Chiefs didn't play anybody. Beat the Chargers anyway, 13-12. Rams beat the Niners 21-20, but
both teams are running.
Playing anybody.
Your boy Carson Wentz. You see his rushing touchdown?
No.
He had this crazy,
Did he?
8-yard rushing touchdown where he dove across the goal line, got hit by 4 49ers while he went in.
Bills beat the Dolphins. I predicted this. It was the big play was a punt return. That was 90-something yards.
That was the most underwhelming second half of the season. The way the first half was going, you're like, oh, we're in for an all-timer. And then that second half sucked. That was terrible.
It was too late. I've been saying for a few weeks now, Baltimore really doesn't want Buffalo to qualify for the playoffs. It was too late by the time they kicked off. They were in no matter what.
Yeah, right.
Now they get at least a home game, which likely means they're going to at least move into the divisional round. But they wouldn't play. Luckily, I don't think they're going to play them.
Right.
So they can avoid them for a while. They're the ones. Josh Allen does crazy Josh Allen things, which may end up being the demise.
He sucked last night, by the way.
Yeah, he did. But
I told you he was, and they still won.
The problem is, though, he can do crazy things, too. Like, he still accounted for over 400 yards of offense.
Right.
Like, he is the most dynamic player in the NFL. So when he's on, you can't beat him.
Yeah.
So that's the danger here with them. Or is he going to be on for an entire month? Probably not.
Yeah.
But, it just takes that one weekend. I think they're the danger to take out Baltimore. And I'm guessing the Dolphins, they're probably going to lose. They've cratered the last few weeks.
They've had cratering injuries, too.
Oh, yeah.
They've lost both defensive ends. They lost Van Ginkel last night. I don't think they can overcome the injuries.
I don't think so either.
Have you also seen the weather for Kansas City for Saturday night? Have you looked into that?
No, is it going to snow or something like that?
0. It is due to be 0 degrees.
The Kansas City is clearly not been the same team, but
Right.
I will tell you this. Their defense is better than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
So the way Miami's kind of going right now and skidding the wrong way, it's hard to buy that Tua is going to make enough plays to beat them.
I agree.
So I bet it's probably a boring, low-scoring actually game that the Chiefs probably win.
I agree.
That's what it feels like right now. Both those teams about 2 months ago looked like collision course Super Bowl. Neither one of them feel that way to me now. And the Dolphins have really fallen off. I mean, bad.
They've not only gotten
Stop
hurt.
telling me how great Wunderkind is, okay? Because it's the second year in a row that in December, they've slid terribly. Terribly, both of them.
This year, I would blame it more on injuries, but it has been a combination of both. They have not been the same the last month.
No, not at all.